Once again, it's Colleen from Divination Counseling Service. I'm here today to present to you an astrology chart. It's called Saturn Ingress into Aquarius. So what is an ingress chart? An ingress chart is when a planet changes into the next sign. So that very moment of 0 degrees, 0 minutes, when it just embarks on the new sign. That actually creates a birth. It's the birth of, in this case, Saturn going into Aquarius. So we're looking at, first of all, what is the difference with Saturn in Aquarius versus Saturn in Capricorn? Well, Saturn, which is things related to discipline and restrictions, organization, hard work, it's our task maker, and it requires us to grow up. So when you're in Capricorn as an energy, there could be a real focus on business because, of course, that disciplined, that hard work, nose to the grindstone is exalted in that Capricorn energy. So business and politics can take the forefront, which I think over the last few years we can see that it has. As it embarks into Aquarius, there's a whole other energy going on. That energy relates to humanity, equality, freedom. Very different. So Saturn, the approach of hard work, the value or what we value is going to slightly change because we might value people now more than just business. We can only hope. I mean, that's the purpose. We're evolving. This is part of our evolution. And we are in a very interesting time in history, which of course can be seen through the charts. So let's first of all introduce the chart. I do have to apologize because it's an awful lot to look at, but I did want to cite the examples as I see them. First of all, there are asteroids in what we refer to here as the outer ring. And these asteroids, so it's not a biwheel. These are all occurring at the same time. We had to layer them into 2 different rings. And honestly, this is only a fraction of the asteroids that I would be working with normally. So the Saturn in Aquarius is here sitting in the second house, the house of value, the house of money and worth. As I stated, what means or what's of value to you as a person, to us as people, because this is an overall chart. Now, I did do this chart for March 22nd, 2020, 1:28 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. This is predominantly, I did Washington, D.C. I actually happen to be an East Coast person. The chart will vary depending on where you're located based on longitude and latitude. But I think that we can safely say that some of the things we're going to be talking about are going to be applicable regardless of where you live. So on a general level, we talked about what Saturn is. We talked about what Capricorn means, and we talked about what it might mean in Aquarius. But let's look at the chart as a whole, because that's really, really important. So as we look into this ingress chart, which, by the way, may be March 22nd, over here you see that, it will retrograde back to Capricorn on May 11th, and then it comes back into October, it comes back into Aquarius permanently. So I do want to state that. We are going to go back and forth. This is still the ingress chart. We are going to cross that 0 degree point, though, again, is what I want to say. So for the ingress chart, we're looking at the aspects. So just right here, let's look at a report that gives this briefly. Okay. So we have our aspect list, and in our aspect list, we drive it down to Saturn. And we look at all of these aspects. We know it conjuncts Pluto, conjuncts Jupiter, squares Uranus. We're going to be talking conjuncts, Pluto, contra parallel to Venus. We'll talk about that. So it does make a lot, at a point here to the Aries point. All right, right in here, talks about the Aries point. And we're going to talk about that. So unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about everything that's in this chart. We could be here a long time. But I do want to pick out a few highlights. And I want to talk about what I think will be the theme for us in the next 4 years. Remember that Saturn is a taskmaster, and mostly it's asking us to mature and grow up. When we look at this in the second house, we see a perfect trine. Now, let's talk about this trine a minute, especially to beginning astrologers. We all assume that a trine is going to make everything so easy. Actually, if a planet's pretty tough, it's just going to make it easy to be tougher. That's easy too. So when we start talking about things like trines, and there's two of them that I want to talk about today, I want to talk about how Saturn is going to make it easy for us to be goal oriented, and the fact that we need to keep our houses, which is keeper of the flame, being goal focused or goal oriented. That's Vesta. And it happens to be running with Adamita, so we know there's going to be delays and obstacles, particularly in a day-to-day reality. It's going to take a minute to get anywhere. The good news, or the good side of Adamitas, is we're going to be having a focus on getting to the bottom of the matter, regardless of how it relates to our lives. So as we look at that, and it relates to Saturn, our money, or in this case, our money, what we're worth, or what we value. The other grand trine I want to talk about is the connection that it has to so many aspects. It's actually called the golden triangle because it's 0 degrees. 0 degrees of Cap, 0 degrees of Cancer, 0 degrees of Libra, and 0 degrees of Aries are all associated with this 0, which to all of the rest of us, that means the Aries point, the world. So the 0 concept means that somehow the whole world is affected. Well, let's be honest, every time a planet goes into 0 degrees, the whole of the world is affected. So I do want to point that out, and it means we're going to be affected for 4 years as a world, which we are. So let's look at some interesting things that I've written about here. So we talked a bit about this Vesta, and we talked a bit about the Adamitos, but let's look across the way here at this opposition of Apollon. It's in retrograde, and in retrograde, let's talk about Apollon. So it means business. It means you need a lot of hands and legs to get through because everything is more than one problem, more than one solution, more than one. And when you're dealing with the business in the retrograde position, okay, it's retro, okay? So there's a lot of retrospect about business. And in the 10th house, it may even relate to businesses that are related to the public, or in terms of each chart, remember that this is how you appear to the world. So how we appear to the world might have to do with freeing our creative ability, 5th house. So we have a lot going on here. It's really good for astrology. Just as a side point here, it's actually good for astrology teachers. I'm saying that as I'm a little biased, being an astrology teacher, but we have Apollon, Uranus is the astrology business, and Saturn is the teacher. They're all there's a square and an opposition, so there's this T-square, there's this incredible amount of tension here. That gives a lot of energy. If you know how to use that energy, that's great. That could be the same if you're working on computers, computer programming. So this is really good for the tech world. But we're still building with that retrograde, and we're still struggling to acquire that with Saturn in the 2nd house. So what is the karma of this chart? It is that we as a world are working on what's valuable to us and working on our own value in a way that's creative to us, that we can present to the world. That's freeing. That's incredibly freeing. What an opportunity this chart is presenting to us. This is a wonderful opportunity. Oh, will it be easy? No, no, no. Jupiter's there. There'll be some healing. But I like to point out, remember that Jupiter's conjuncting. And I find that when Jupiter conjuncts Saturn, there's also an expansion of restriction or an expansion of discipline or an expansion of putting your nose to the grindstone. So in other words, you're working really, really hard in order to expand on your value or your worth. And you have the energy to do it because Jupiter's sitting right there with Mars. Wonderful lineup, wonderful opportunity. No, it will not always be easy, but it will be healing. That's pretty much a guarantee. So as we continue through this, realize that the restructuring of our business, or what we consider business, okay, or what we need to free us, we also look at this contraparallel to Venus. Well, whenever Venus is an aspect to Saturn, there are some restrictions with regards to relationships, because Venus is, of course, our relationships, but it's also our money. And there's a little bit of restriction on money. So we're all going to have to be a little bit tighter, a little bit more self sufficient, because there isn't going to be a lot of money, I believe, to throw around. Not in the next 4 years. I think we're all headed in the right way. I think there's a great deal of healing, but I don't think that's quite there. As we move to Hygeia, was the other one I really wanted to look at right here. Okay, this coming out a little bit, but this is also proving that this restriction that we've been going through is actually really good for us. And it's really good for us because it's enabling us to take this opportunity. Hopefully we're taking this opportunity to recreate not only what we think should be our business, but what we believe is of value. And this does bode well for humanitarian efforts. So I wish I could say it would be a great time, but it's going to be a struggle. Know that we're not alone, and that there's a great deal of healing and freedom in this. So if you have any further questions, please contact me at divinationcounselingservice.org. If you'd like a private reading or an astrology lesson, send me a message from my site. I'll get back to you right away. If you just want more information, check out other posts on the site. I'm sure you'll find a lot there that'll keep you interested and busy, particularly during this downtime in America. Well, in the world. Till next time, happy readings.